All right, everybody, welcome in a Wednesday edition of the Full Court Trap Podcast. I am Luke Tackett, your host. Join with me, my main man, Blake Smith, as usual. And we've got a lot of action to unpack here tonight, Blake, from yesterday. We've got some games tonight as well that we'll get into more tomorrow. But we obviously talked about Kentucky and Tennessee, that thrilling matchup. So if you're looking for more content in regards to that, be sure to go check out our rapid reaction from last night. But there's a lot of other stuff to unpack here, Blake, and we'll start over at Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse, where the 11th ranked Jayhawks they prevailed 87-91 in a scare from Central Florida. There, it looked like Kansas was on the ropes once again. Obviously, they were coming off that loss against Houston last weekend and needed to get a bounce back here, but it got a little sketchy at times, and this game didn't come without its share of controversy as well.
Yeah, before I dive super deep into the gist of the game and break it down talent by talent, play by play, I want to start off by saying that was a master class by the referees in a not so good way. There's a lot of awful calls, especially the one that basically sealed the deal for the Jayhawks down the stretch. 4.6 seconds left. Darius Johnson comes up with a full steam ahead, uh, running down towards the half court line. He goes up on two or three defenders, literally in the shooting motion. They call it on the floor. Jayhawks ended up winning because they couldn't get a bucket or they couldn't score there at the end after the on the floor call. It's just unreal, honestly. It was a bad referee showing all night long, and I mean that last call kind of was the icing on the cake there for that game. But I do want to give a shout out to Flory Badunga for the Jayhawks. His resurgence and his development as a freshman that wasn't playing a ton at the beginning to now being a starter and being a really good side piece basically for Hunter Dickinson. It's been awesome to watch those two work in the front court so far. And Flory ended up finishing with 10 points, 11 boards, 5 blocks, 2 steals, and I think 2 assists as well on 80% from the field. So that was a heck of a performance by him. Zeke Mayo finally decided to show up, like the guy we've seen play at Kansas City, Missouri, before he transferred, and he had 24 points, 9 boards, 5 assists, shot pretty efficient on the night. Hunter Dickinson, he gave you Hunter Dickinson classic numbers. I think it was 24 and 7 is what it was. So he had a really good game. KJ Adams chipped in some good minutes. Same with AJ Storr, even though he struggled from the field, he was good on the defensive end. Shaquille Moore, not an offensive player, did well on the defensive end. Then you look at the Knights, UCF Knights. Keyshawn Hall went off. I mean, this is a guy that was called the big guard coming out of high school. He's got the body size, and he moves like a guard when he's in the body of a 4 or even a 3. So, I mean, he was doing amazing. He had 34 points on the night, 7 boards, 3 assists, and a steal on 9 of 19 from the field. So, I mean, he took a pretty hefty load of shots on the night, but he ended up shooting 5 of 7 from 3. So, overall, great night for Keyshawn. I mean, they kind of got hoed there at the end. I mean, still a big win for the Jayhawks to be able to hang on to that because really, UCF really isn't that bad of a team, I think. I mean, their resume so far isn't great, but I mean, I still think this is a quality team, at least in the decent Big 12 this year.
Yeah, they're definitely a quality team. I mean, they've had their moments there where they've competed. I mean, they had the 1 point loss to Houston. They kept it close with Arizona. They got blown out the last time they played Kansas, so they bounced back here nicely and gave them a scare there. You mentioned, obviously, the performance of Hall, and on the other side of things as well for UCF, Darius Johnson, he had a solid game as well with 19, and I
And
was
you
really
add in
impressed.
Mustafa
Yeah.
Thiem. He had a really good game. He's a guy that has our UCF fans and just NBA people in general have high hopes for. He's got a lot of potential. 17-5 on the night against two really, really good big men in the front court. Then you add in KJ Adams off the bench, who, I mean, he's undersized, but he's a like super muscular, strong individual. So I mean, that's definitely a big showing and a big highlight, I think, for the night for them.
Yeah, and definitely. I think when I look at the Kansas side of things too, when it comes to how they were able to pull out this game, obviously there's the ref controversy, but the UCF bench really didn't provide a lot of anything really for
Uh,
the Golden Knights there. And then you had KJ Adams and David Coit off the bench for Kansas that came in and made plays. Both chipped in 12, and then Hunter Dickinson and Zeke Mayo combining for 48. That's a hell of a night for that duo. They really like to see the Kansas offense here. They were really humming on all ends. Flory Badunga, I think he got the start in this game over KJ Adams, didn't he, at the
yeah,
four
he
spot?
did. Yeah,
I think Kansas has definitely found something there with Flory at the four spot because we saw how it looked in the Houston game when KJ Adams was just completely ruled out, and it obviously was a good experiment. I think that they may want to continue going down that path. I mean, we're obviously a big fan of Flory and his game on this podcast, so I'd love to see it from that side of things and for Bill Self as well. I mean, if you're looking at the long term success of this team and what you want to do, that's a good place to start. I do notice one thing when looking at the box score here as well. AJ Storr, he only played 7 minutes. He wasn't hindered by any kind of injury or anything, was he? I don't
not that I
recall that.
remember. It's just
That
probably not his game, and Bill Self basically just sat him on the bench. Probably told him like what's going on, and I mean,
yeah.
hopefully it's for the team because I mean this is a Jayhawks team that I mean they have shown like inconsistencies early on and semi recently, but I mean this is still a really really deep team. And if they can keep humming along in a tough Big 12, then I think they should be near the top of the Big 12 the rest of the way. And in the conference tournament picture, I definitely think they have a solid chance at winning it. I mean, obviously, Iowa State, a Baylor team. I mean, Baylor's kind of struggled, but VJ Edgecombe's coming on and starting to perform like crazy. Rob Wright for them, he's starting to perform well. Uh, who else am I missing out on?
VJ, I mean, I know you mentioned him obviously, but I think I saw a stat earlier over his last like 4 games. He's averaging like 24 a game, I believe,
Yeah,
something close to that. He's really starting to find a groove there, which is pretty encouraging.
like he's looking like a top three guy right now in that draft, which is kind of wild to think. Just because, like he started off really really shaky. I thought he was gonna have one of his better performances against Gonzaga, like the first game of the season. But I mean
Yeah.
that looked completely opposite of what I was imagining. He struggled hefty in that game, but I mean now he's starting to be comfortable. He's getting to his spots a lot better, and he's scoring at a much more efficient rate than what he was originally.
I will say, if you're Baylor, though, you do have to be careful because they just lost to BYU last night, obviously, and their current record's 13-7. Like, if they keep slipping up, they're going to be entering bubble territory. They
Yeah,
definitely got to be careful here because the Big 12, with how rough it is, they could easily find themselves on the wrong side of things there. And you mentioned the whole Big 12 conference as a whole, conference tournament. I'm still on board. I mean, I like Kansas, obviously, with the amount of talent and the way they're coached. You can never completely count them out. But I honestly think this is just going to be Iowa State or Houston's league to lose.
yeah. I
And
think the
when it,
same right now too. But I mean,
yeah,
this is still a Kansas team that's hard to count them out just because of the Bill Self factor. I don't know. It's just kind of hard to count them out. But I mean, Iowa
yeah,
State and Houston have both been performing crazy well, uh, like all season long. So it's gonna be a tough one to win. I'm looking forward to watching those teams primarily in that conference down the stretch. And yeah,
I'll tell you a team that we're not going to be watching down the stretch, the North Carolina Tar Heels, because good Lord,
boom.
Blake, they dropped another one. They're 13-9, and it's not even February yet. There's just no hope when it comes to this group. I'll say it right now because I think it's all but confirmed. The only way they get in the NCAA tournament is if they put together a miracle and just win the ACC outright in the conference tournament because their resume, they're not going to have enough. I mean, they keep dropping these games that they can't afford to drop. They dropped the Stanford one. Now they dropped this one to Pitt, and they've got to welcome a Duke squad into well, no, they're going on the road to Duke, excuse me, but
Yeah.
they got to go to their rivals gym against a team that looks like one of the top title contenders this year. I mean, this North Carolina season, it's if it's not off the rails completely, it's hanging on by like a slim little thread because it's just bad over
I
there.
don't I don't even know if it's hanging on at this point. I mean, like they lost to Pittsburgh, which I mean, at the start of the season they were a good team, but they just haven't really impressed me and a lot of people so far in the second half of the season, I feel like. Boston College, they played close with them and went to OT. Boston College, I'll put it out there, they suck. They're not a basketball school whatsoever, really. And to be in overtime and barely hang on, congrats, Hubert. You did it. You won a game against an awful team when you're compared to an awful team. So, and then they lose to Wake Forest. I mean, eh. Wake
Yeah.
Forest is gonna miss the tournament too, but I mean, it's still not a great loss. Stanford, you lose to them. They're awful. Besides that, Maxime, Raynaud, however you say it. Let's keep going down the schedule. They get hammered by Louisville. Hmm. Florida losing by 6 isn't a bad loss. But basically, the moral of the story is this team, second half of the season, they've just completely derailed the train tracks. And I really don't see any hope for this team the rest of the way. CBI is probably their best bet at this rate.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like with this squad, when they were exiting non-conference play, they actually did get a feel-good win against UCLA in the CBS Sports Classic. You thought
Yeah.
maybe they'd finally found something. Ian Jackson was starting to break out of his shell, and this season being as bad as it has nothing to do with Ian Jackson. I will add that dude's a pro. He's going to be a lottery pick, but in this game, Blake, He went with the four-guard lineup and their starting big man was Vin Allen Lubin. So that's a nightmare fuel scenario right there when your starting big is Vin Allen Lubin. And of course, the Carolina bigs once again just got out hustled, out physicaled, and outworked by Pittsburgh's bigs there. Everybody in the starting lineup for Pittsburgh really did their thing. Four guys in double figures. It was a great night for them all around. Zach Austin, he had a great performance there with 15. Then you had guys like Cameron Corrin. He had a great outing as well. They just, North Carolina, they did not deserve to win this game flat out. And it's really just, it's almost embarrassing at this point. Like, there's nothing left to talk about when it comes to this Carolina team. We've said it repeatedly. They don't have any bigs. The guard play is inconsistent. Hubert, I think it's safe to say now, the dude may just not be a good basketball coach, quite frankly.
No.
The only reason I think that he's going to have a job going into next season is because he managed to get Caleb Wilson through whatever ungodly amount of NIL money that he was offered. And I don't really foresee this being any better next year for him either because, I mean, the freshman class besides Caleb Wilson isn't that good, and they're going to
Eh,
lose.
I don't know.
You
They're
disagree?
Yeah, I think their freshman class is solid, but it's nothing that's gonna like completely like overturn their current like state of the program.
Yeah, that's
Uh, I
that's kind of
really,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
I really think it all comes down to firing Hubert, and yeah, I really do think it comes down to firing Hubert because what he's put together so far at North Carolina really isn't appealing to the eye. They need a guy. I'm not saying coaching style or like the scheme offensively or defensively. I'm just saying like a really good coach like Roy Williams. Man, that's a mouthful. But he they need someone to be a staple coach in that program and be around for a decent amount of time and like knows what UNC means because Hubert Davis so far, I mean, Yeah, he was an assistant coach under Williams, but he just hasn't shown much fight as a coach at UNC. I mean, this is a team that is front courtless practically, and they're missing out on a Duthiero, a bunch of other bigs that they could have had in the portal preseason, and now they're stuck with Jalen Withers, Jalen Washington, Vin Allen Lubin, and Ty Claude, I think his name is. And so,
Hmm.
like, when you really get down to the core, and those are like your four big men in your front court, then I mean that's just not going to win you games. They're all role players. They're not starters. They don't really have a guy that elevates that team to like another level. They don't have a guy that like I can't even talk. Armando Baycott. They don't have a guy like that right now. And I think it really, really hurts them because when he was at UNC, or when Baycott was at UNC, they had two guys that they were going to. They had RJ Davis, who looked much better than this year, and they had Baycott. And so when you take away Baycott, who was one of their most productive scorers, and then you take Davis's decrease in scoring and just overall as a player this year, that's why they're the product they are. That's why they are the way they are right now.
Yeah, and there's no way that it's going to get any better this season. I mean, at this point, you're just hoping to get to next season with Caleb Wilson and a new group of guys in the portal and see what happens. But I think Hubert's going to be on very thin ice next year because that Carolina fan base is fed up with him, and rightfully so. I mean, this is not the standard at North Carolina. This is going to be two missed tournaments in the last 3 seasons now. Unacceptable. I mean, I think that he should really be let go now, to be honest with you, if
Me
I'm a
too.
UNC fan, but I don't think it's going to happen just because of the fact that he does have a somewhat good recruiting class coming in that could be his saving grace there. But enough talk about a bad basketball team. And let's get to a good one that we haven't talked about too much on this podcast that needs some love. The St. John's Red Storm. They absolutely demolished Georgetown last night. That game was 23-3 with just a few minutes into the first half, and it never got better from there for Georgetown and Ed Cooley. And Blake, we haven't really gotten a chance to discuss Rick Pitino's squad here a lot, but man, he's cooking over there because that team, they're well rounded. They play tough defense, physical, and they've got the offense as well. It really is just a true Rick Pitino squad in terms of the makeup and the overall DNA of that core.
Yeah, when you got four guys in double digits on the night against a rather decent team in the Big East, you know you're cooking with fire there. Uh, Rick Pitino really has taken that program over and just completely changed the culture. I feel like they got guys like Kadari Richmond, who I still think he's a pro prospect. He's looking great right now for them. Zuby Ejiofor, I'm probably butchering that, but he had a really good night as well. He keeps producing at a high level. Uh, let's see, Simeon Wilcher, he's doing amazing on the defensive end. 5 steals the other night against Georgetown. 7 points, 5 assists. This is a guy that was committed to UNC at one point actually, and decommitted, but he's looking really good too right now for them. RJ Lewis has been consistent all year for them. Uh, yeah, they really just got a deep team. I think Devion Smith was out in this one, but they've really impressed me this season.
Yeah, they've definitely been one of the more impressive teams in the Big East. I mean, I don't think anybody would have thought that they would be ahead of UConn right now by a solid 2 spots and tied for
No,
Marquette with the first spot in that conference. And I can't wait. I don't know when Marquette and St. John's meet up. I think oh, no, it's next Tuesday, actually. I just remembered that. They play at St. John's next Tuesday. That's going to be a big time matchup. And Marquette, they've got UConn this Saturday, so this really could be a separation week for them in the Big East to firmly assert themselves at that top spot in the Big East. But between those two, I mean, I like what Marquette has there with Cam Jones, obviously. I mean, he's a dynamic scorer. They've got dudes all over that squad, but St. John's, man, I mean, they've been cooking recently. It's hard to argue against them possibly being the best as well. We'll find out next Tuesday, I guess. But leading into what I was saying about Marquette, they played last night as well. They were actually in a close one there with Butler at Hinkle for a while, and then they ended up pulling away 78-69. Stevie Mitchell, he came up big and was making big time plays for the Golden Eagles there. You had Cam Jones with a 17 bomb, 7 for 13 from the field. David Joplin had a nice outing as well. They took care of their business here, Blake, and that's always an encouraging thing to see, especially when you consider the fact that this is a group that fell to Xavier just a short couple weeks ago. And it's good to see them finish this one out because this would have been a really bad loss for their resume if it would have held, because I think Butler was in control for a little bit.
Yeah, they were like down the stretch. It got to a point where I thought they were gonna end up getting upset, but Marquette just ended up with like I think it was 7 minutes, 8 minutes, somewhere around that time frame. They ended up just completely taking over that game. Ended up winning by 9. I mean Butler. I feel like they've been in a few good games or close games this year with quality teams. So I mean you can't really hate on their parade. They're not a good team this year, but I mean they still show up when it really matters. I feel like, but Marquette, for them to go on the road in a tough environment at Hinkle, it says a lot to pull that game off when your back's against the wall 90% of the game and you still nearly win by double digits. It's a good win for Marquette. I mean, you can't really fault them for their early struggles in that game. I think it says more about Marquette in that one, about their will to finish a game and not get upset in this instance. And when you got four guys with really, really good performances on both sides of the floor, I mean, it's just hard to beat a team that's as deep as this Marquette team. I think Soley said something about them being like a first or second round team, maybe not
Oh
even
no,
making the
no,
tournament.
oh no. He said they wouldn't make the tournament. I'm calling you
Oh,
out. I'm
he
calling you
did.
out on that one, Sully. You said
Yeah,
Marquette would miss the tournament preseason.
yeah, that's a rather bad take. But I mean, it happened. It happens. But yeah, this team is a lot better than some people give credit for. Stevie Mitchell, he's unbelievably good for that team. Cam Jones, obviously one of the best players in the country, I feel like, and he put up really good numbers: 17 points, 4 assists, 1 block, 1 board on over 53% from the field. Only had 1 turnover as well. So I mean that's a really good performance on the road. Chase Ross, 12, 4, 4, 2, and 2. Um, let's see, almost 50% for true shooting percentage. So I mean, it was a really good overall night for those guys. It was a great fight for them, and any road win, I feel like, no matter what conference it is a good road win because I mean, no matter what level of basketball you're playing in, it's always tough to win on the road.
I can't wait to see how they do when they host UConn on Saturday and then they go to St. John's, because this is going to be a defining stretch for them and really the Big East as a whole, who ends up coming out on top in the regular season there. That's going to be really intriguing to see over
Yeah.
this course of the next couple of days. We'll have more of a preview on that. I was about to give my pick straight up, but I'll shut my mouth for now and transition over to one of your favorite teams, Blake, the Louisville Cardinals. They just keep rolling. They won at the Yum Center last night, 59-72 against Wake Forest, the number 21 team in the country, the Cardinals. They're on a heater. This game, I think the scoreboard's a little bit deceptive of the overall tone because Louisville was in firm control and, to be quite frank, dominated this game.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of just goes to show like how deep this and good this Louisville team is. Like this is a team we're talking about that had Kenny Payne in the realm, coaching last year, and they just flat out sucked. Past few years, they've sucked, and
Mm-hmm.
then you get Pat Kelsey, and he's completely taken over that program, rejuvenated it, and they're just doing great things right now. And this really is like a stamp, basically, on what I was talking about on the one episode about how I think this team's like Final Four good. They're just really, really good. I mean, you got guys like Chucky Hepburn and Rain Smith, and then you add in Terrence Edwards Jr. in this one, and like that backcourt is just insanely good right now. Rain Smith, I mean, he could potentially be like an NBA guy, late second round, undrafted free agent type of guy, but I mean, he's got an absolute clip from behind the arc. Chucky Hepburn, he's one of the best two-way guards in all of college basketball. And what he was doing against Wake Forest was just unreal. Also, Rain Smith finished with plus 23 on the night against Wake Forest. So, yeah, this team's really good, man. Wake Forest, like I said, they're not a bad team, and to win by 13 in this one, I think that just really stamps them as a legit team. And this is their 10th win straight. So, I mean, this is a hot team. They might be the hottest team in America right now.
The only thing that I worry about when it comes to Louisville, and I mean, they're on this winning streak, obviously, and it takes a good team to piece together this many good performances in a row.
Hmm.
But, I mean, I feel like we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't mention that a lot of these ACC opponents they've been playing haven't really been top notch. I mean, we know how the conference is as a whole. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to discredit them because you got to take care of who's in front of you. You got to handle your business, and they've done that better than anybody in the country. But I just wonder how this will all translate when it comes to March when they're taking on teams that are outside of the ACC, what that'll look like. And then the only other thing I worry about is where this team's just had to deal with so many problems with injuries. The overall depth of their squad, I feel like it's kind of limited at the moment. And
Yeah.
that's just a little bit of a concern I have. But when you've got guys like Terrence Edwards, who I've loved since the preseason, Chucky Hepburn, and Rain Smith playing the way they are, I mean, depth may not be that much of a concern, but you do have to factor in that the only guy they really have off the bench who I would say is kind of a consistent type of player you can go to. And I don't even know if consistent's really the word to use it, but Traore, he's pretty good. I like what he
Yeah.
offers.
And he's
But
been out
then
for the year for a while because of injury. But
yeah, it's
good to see
he's
him
a good
back.
he's a good player. And then Connie Roos, I mean, he's all right. He's a role player. He does what he's needed when he comes in, and
He's
then obviously
raw. He'll be
yeah,
really
he's
good, I think, here in like a year or two, though.
yeah, he's very raw because he is a freshman, obviously. And then you got Frank Anselm off the bench as well. He doesn't really contribute a ton, to be honest with you. I mean, he's kind of the vibes guy of that Louisville squad. Every squad's
Hmm.
got that vibes guy that just brings up the energy, and on the court maybe isn't always there, but that's just the only concern I have with Louisville right now is the depth and just the fact that the competition hasn't maybe been the most stout as compared to some of these other teams around the country in like the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. But speaking of the SEC, we got to talk about Texas A&M. They won a close one last night, 68-75 against Oklahoma on their home court. This one was a 9 o'clock tip off, and Oklahoma they're continuing to deal with their conference struggles here while A&M continues to piece things together and look like one of the better teams in the country. And Blake, they sit at 16-5 right now, but I will mention that two of those losses came to Alabama and Kentucky in close fashion, and in both of those games they didn't have Wade Taylor. So if you run those games back with Wade Taylor, you're looking at an Aggie squad that possibly could have came out with both of those wins and maybe sits at 16-3 right now and is firmly in talks for like a 2 seed, even creeping up to maybe the 1 seed line because their resume is very impressive. The stain really being that blown lead against Texas. But I just wanted to point that out because, I mean, they took care of their business against Oklahoma like you expect them to. And then you contribute all the other stuff that they did in the non conference. Only really loss they had in the non conference slip up wise was against Oregon, and nobody's going to hold that against you. They lost to UCF in the very first game of the season, but I mean, Texas A&M's a much different team than they are at the first game of the year. So I'm very impressed with the Aggies right now, Blake. I don't know about you, and I really do wonder how they'd be looking right now if Wade Taylor wouldn't have missed that time back about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, this A&M team, if they had Taylor, and like when they played Kentucky and Bama, then I do think there's a chance they could have pulled it off. Oklahoma's kind of struggled lately, but I mean they're still a decent team in the SEC. They were ranked top 25 at one point for a reason. A and
Yeah,
M
undefeated
absolute
coming out of non-conference too.
Yeah, A&M they absolutely dominated on the boards too. It was like a 47-19 advantage for A&M, and then also A&M had 21 offensive rebounds. Oklahoma had 2. So I mean, when it really comes down to it, and you're losing by 7 on the night, the Sooners that is, and you're letting up 21 offensive rebounds, then I mean there's kind of a big key in why you lost. Like you can't allow that many rebounds, offensive rebounds, and expect to win in a game that's really close. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's just not a good thing. A&M obviously is one of the best rebounding teams in America right now, but that's just a rough thing to try to go to A&M and win, and you get out rebounded, absolutely dominated on the glass all night. So it's kind
Yeah.
of rough for them.
Yeah, if you let A&M get going on the boards, they're going to punk you because they're one of the best teams in the country when it comes to overall rebounding efficiency and whatnot. It's really impressive that they were able to pull this one out, given that they shot 16% from three and only 37 from the field, while Oklahoma was shooting about 45% from three. The A&M did get a little bit more of a whistle, I would say, because they got 35 free throw attempts on this game. I mean, you can
Yeah, it
chalk
was
that
like
up to
I think it was like a 28-22 foul comparison. A&M had
yeah.
or Oklahoma had 28 fouls, I think it was.
Yeah, and I mean, you can chalk that up to many different things. It could be refs having
Oh,
too much of a.
Oak, my bad. I didn't mean
Oh
to
no, you're good.
cut you off. It was a 25-21. Oklahoma had 25 fouls. A&M had 21. So not a huge difference, but I mean,
Yeah,
still the free throw thing is a big key there.
yeah, A&M. I mean, you can chalk that up to them being the more physical team, or I guess
Yeah.
you could also say that the referees in college basketball, we know what they're capable of when they get going with the whistles. So that might be a factor as well if you're an Oklahoma fan. And gosh, the Sooners, they don't get a break because they got to host a Vandy squad that's hot on Saturday. And
Yeah.
then they got to go to the jungle, and then they get Tennessee for their next two after the Vandy game. So it doesn't really look like things are going to get better unless they do steal one here. But I mean, there's talent on the team to steal one. I mean, I don't
Mhm.
want to count them out by any means. I don't know if you agree with me on that one or not, but there's talent on this Oklahoma team. They were
Yeah.
undefeated in non-conference for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. I still think they can pull a couple upsets, if you would, off
Yeah.
here coming up. I mean, that Vanderbilt game is winnable. Vanderbilt, they are hot though, so I mean, it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, and Tennessee's definitely a winnable one, I think. The only one I'd count them out completely is when they go to the jungle, but it doesn't look
Yeah.
like anybody can win there, so nobody's going to hold
No.
that against you. A little basketball related thing, but also really not basketball related thing, more of an extracurricular. What in the world happened in the VCU St. Louis game last night? Because we had fans scrapping in the stands, just going at each other, and this like put a whole halt to the game. Like the broadcast was focused in on it and everything. I mean, Royal Rumble over there in St. Louis,
Yeah.
Blake. What in the world?
I mean, I thought Royal Rumble was supposed to be on Saturday. Like I'm actually going to be there, and all of a sudden I see dudes fucking choking people out on live TV at a college basketball game, just fucking roundhouse, and then all of a sudden, like you got that breaking out in the crowd. Like you wouldn't expect that to happen in a game. It's unbelievable. People need to like learn to respect each other if you're going
Yeah,
out
no,
in public like that. That's
like
absurd to do.
as John Rothstein says, when that fight breaks out, grab your nitroglycerin pills, everybody, because man, what in the world was that? That was a roller coaster. But speaking of some other weird things in college basketball this week, this is gonna kind of be the conclusion to the podcast for today. But on Monday, Duke obviously had a game against NC State. They took care of business, won by 10. It was close in moments, but I mean Cooper Flagg did his thing and took him over the top. But we
Can
had
we talk
Cayman,
about that
yeah,
weird game?
yeah. We had Cayman Malawach projectile vomiting on the court, and then minutes later, a girl is passed out and getting
Yeah.
carried off the floor. Now, ESPN, what are we doing showing a passed out
Focusing,
woman?
yeah, like
That's a
it's
complete like
absurd.
just that's a complete just disrespect of privacy. Like, what in the world, man? Like, we're not
Yeah.
supposed to see that stuff.
No,
Just
that's rough to watch.
that
I'm
was
glad
so
I wasn't tuned
strange.
in at the time.
Dude, I was watching it like, and that was just minutes after Malawach threw up. I was like, "What the hell is going on at Duke? Like,
Yeah.
is there some kind of devil magic in the building? Like, what in the world?"
Yeah, it did seem like it was getting like haunted there or something, or somebody put a spell or something weird because those two things happening like that is just unbelievable.
I wish I had more to say about the game, but that kind of dominated the headlines there. That was just strange. But speaking
Yeah.
of things that dominated the headlines, Blake, I know you were up late Monday night. I was not. Tell me about Caleb Love, man. What in the world was he cooking with against the Cyclones there?
He started off super slow. Hadn't made many shots on the night, and then all of a sudden, when it really mattered most, he comes out and bangs in a half court bomb, a prayer, if you would. And I was sitting there watching the game with my brother, and all of a sudden, what the fuck? It's like 1:30 in the morning. I thought I was gonna get in trouble or something, but yeah, Caleb Love. I mean, he did struggle in that first half, and really most of that game until the final moments of that second half, and then after he hit the half court bomb, he really took over in overtime. He finished with 22 on the night, had four threes, and yeah, he really took over when it mattered most. And then you got to give you some props to Carter Bryant as well. This is a NBA draft, basically a lock at this point. He's got all the tools to be a guy to get drafted. Really good shooter, and he proved it against a highly ranked defensive team in Iowa State. So for him to be a freshman and put up the numbers he did, 14 on 71% from the field on the night, that's a really good showing for him. And then on the Iowa State side, I mean, they kind of just handed that game to Arizona, I felt like, to be honest with you, because they had all the opportunities in the world down the stretch. And Joshua Jefferson missing that free throw, only going 1 of 2 there, like with, I think it was like 5 seconds left or something. That really hurt them because they could have sealed the deal in that game. He misses one of them, then Caleb Love comes down, and they just kind of seemed defeated in that overtime.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona, they needed this win badly because they're trying to get their resume going in the right direction, and they really have done a hell of a job because they stand alone in second place in the Big 12 right now, 8-1. Houston's
Hmm.
obviously 8-0, and then Iowa State's shortly behind them, 7-2. Are we worried at all by what we saw at Iowa State, or is it just chalked up to one of those nights? I mean, Caleb Love, he drops in a nuke from half court. Nothing much you can do about that.
Yeah, just one of those nights. Luck wasn't on their side there. They were literally a half court shot being missed away from just going on the road and winning that game. And
And that
then
would have been a
once,
quality win as well.
yeah, well, it would have been, but I mean, we saw how it turned out. Unfortunately for the Cyclones, but this is a big win for the Wildcats. I don't know how much that can be stated.
Yeah, I mean, besides Caleb Love, obviously it was his show down the stretch. Toby Awaka, he had a hell of a game. He was perfect from the field, had a double double with 17 and 12. And then when you have a guy like Carter Bryant coming off the bench and he drops 14 on 5 for 7 and chips in four threes, that's the kind of things you need to have happen to take out a top rated team like Iowa State. You got to have a guy off the bench bring you some energy, a little bit of luck, and then your other guys stepping up in spots where you need them. So I like where things are heading for Arizona. They had a really rough non-conference and starting into conference play. We were concerned about them, but they've started to piece some things together. It looks like, and Tommy Lloyd, he's trying to get this group elevated throughout the Big 12 and the overall just realm of March Madness to come. Maybe they can get a decent seed line out of this if they keep going on the track that they are. But I'm trying to Google here when exactly their next opponent is because they're obviously going to have a chance to get some more quality wins in the Big 12. They've got a rivalry game on Saturday. They take on Arizona State, and then they get BYU Tuesday. They've still got to play Texas Tech and Arizona. They're going to get a rematch against Iowa State as well, and they also play
Houston on the
Kansas.
15th.
Yeah,
Houston on the 15th would be good.
yeah. There's wins out there for that group to get a resume compiled here that they can be proud of heading out of Big 12 play. So we'll see. This is a team I could definitely see being a little bit frisky down the stretch. We'll obviously see how that continues to develop. But Blake, that was about everything for Monday and Tuesday. I think we've covered all of our ground. We got some more action going on tonight. A lot of good teams in action. Bama, Mississippi State. I can't wait for that game. I'm going to have my eyes
Auburn,
glued.
Auburn, LSU right now. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
it's a trap game. I want to check the score before I say anything
Yeah, I was gonna
crazy.
say that game just started while we
It's a
were.
3 point game right now as I speak.
Yeah,
8:19 left, 19-16. So it's a little rough scoring game right now, I'd say, for both sides. But I mean, it kind of just has the feel of a trap game. Just
yeah,
LSU is always kind of a funky place to play at, smaller arena. And I mean, Auburn's coming off a really high against Tennessee, a team
mm-hmm.
that, I mean, they're struggling. I think they've lost their past 3 games, but it was still a dangerous team.
Yeah, for
Auburn's up
sure.
by 8 now. They're probably going to run away with it. Maryland, Wisconsin's close right now. It's really the only notable games going on at the moment.
Yeah, Bama and Mississippi State tonight. Texas and Ole Miss. That'll be a good one as well. But anything crazy happens, we'll be right back here to record some emergency reactions. Other than that, we'll talk about it all tomorrow in another video. But Blake, let's go watch some hoops and get this video out to the people. This is the Full Court Trap Pod signing out. See you guys next time.